All right, Sam, some bonus coverage here, rounding the bases. I always like to give my guests 4 kind of random questions to wrap things up. The first is this. You talked in the podcast interview about having gone toe-to-toe, sometimes heated, with Dayton Moore, but always ending well, very professional, which doesn't surprise me. How strange was that to have that guy that you often went toe-to-toe with as the guy that wanted to hire you, the guy was pushing for you, and the guy that you now report to?
Yeah. I mean, here's a story. So Swanee, who had this job, he called me. We had a relationship, and when he called me a little bit ahead of time, just to give me a heads up that he was retiring, I cussed. Like, I was like, and I kind of backed up, and I was like, I'm sorry, man. Congratulations, you've earned it. I'm happy for you, but I was just like, I'm just sad, man. Like, whoever they hire is just not going to be as good for us. And I hope I'm not right about that. We'll see. But so my point here is that it came like pretty out of the blue. But it was flattering. I mean, I'd be lying. I mean, it was definitely flattering. But what flipped it in my head though, from like, because I could have done that job in for 100 years if they would have let me, and I wasn't looking to leave. I know people can talk about newspapers or journalism or whatever, but I was very happy there. I loved that job. I loved the connections with Kansas City. But when he said, look, I just know you won't lie. You won't lie for us, and you want what's best for Kansas City. And I was like, well, hot damn, like I can do that, like if that's how you're putting it, then maybe this is something to do. So it's just, look, I don't mean this in a way that like, oh, they picked me, but like, I just think it's so cool that the Royals, that Dayton kind of looked outside the box, and they could have hired somebody that had a traditional PR background, and that person would have been great, by the way. Like, they could have hired 6 different people, and they all would have been great at this job. But I think the kind of team that I want to work for is the kind of team that can go outside the box a little bit and think of ways that they can connect specifically with Kansas City. And whether that was me or somebody else with a similar background of mine, I just thought it was really cool, and kind of confirmation of what I already thought about the Royals before this.
Very cool. Second question, as we round the bases. You told me this when I was at spring training. I was not the least bit surprised, but it's one of the coolest things, that your kids now, they think you're cooler. Like, Dad now has access to places that they couldn't go. I mean, you had access to all those places before, but now they can get a little bit closer too. I mean, how much have you won the coolest dad contest?
There was I don't think they ever really cared what I did for a living. Like, that was just never. It was what I always did. As long as
it's what you did, right?
Yeah, and then so this was a change, and it was the Royals. I mean, they do it right. They, like a lot of people, a lot of places talk about wanting to be for families, but the first day when you bring home like a bag full of stuff, a bag full of like shirts and like baseball bats and stuff like that for your kids, like that's gonna leave an impression. They came down for spring break, and they were out in the backfields and at the games, and I mean they just it's a very different perspective that they'll be able to have, and I am incredibly grateful for that, and part of the reason why is because that I know in 5, 10, 20 years they're going to be grateful for that.
Yeah, no doubt. Third question, as we round the bases. This is always one of my favorite questions, but one of my least favorite questions, because it's somewhat impossible to answer for guys like me and you. Is if you have a favorite interview or person of all time, which is crazy because there's thousands of them. But like, I always try to think for myself, like, all right, just the most fun interview ever was Roddy Piper. It's just like, wait, how am I sitting interviewing Roddy Piper before a Cardinals Cubs game at Wrigley Field, and he's wearing a kilt? and he kissed me on live television. That's not anything you could ever plan. Will Ferrell, like I guess the celebrities for me, because we get so used to being around the sports people that it's just like, yeah, I've talked to, you've talked to Mahomes how many times? You've talked to, fill in the blank, Bill Self a million times. What's that one or bunch that stand out? Or I don't know if it's an Art Stewart or something like that. Who's that one for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton that are just easy to talk to and fill it up, as we say, fill the notebook up. There's probably a TV version of that, fill the notebook up. But
Yep.
Mark Teahan is an all-timer. Dustin Colquitt is an all-timer. I mean, there's a bunch. If I name, and I just named 2, but I could name 50 if I wanted. But I mean, Art Stewart changed my life in a lot of ways. I mean, just meeting that guy and hearing his stories and being able to like just sort of be in his orbit a little bit and feeling that joy. I mean, it was forget baseball. I mean, I know this is somewhat of a baseball show and we're baseball people, but there's an Art Stewart in football. There's an Art Stewart in basketball. There's an Art Stewart in architecture. There's an Art Stewart of teaching. I mean, when you're lucky enough to be around people who have that much joy and bring, it's a contagious joy. Andy Reid, the Chiefs coach, always talks about energy givers and energy suckers. And Art is just an all-time energy giver. And I think about him all the time. I think about him absolutely all the time. And, gosh, I know, again, there's Art Stewarts in different disciplines, but those of us that are lucky enough to have somebody like that in our world, we can sort of capture that and take it with us. What a gift. What an absolute gift.
Yeah. And, you wrote a book with him and you're right.
Can I tell you like a quick story about that? But I don't know if I've told you this. Maybe I've told you the story. By
the way, that for those that are, I mean, most people in the baseball world know who Art Stewart is, but recently passed away and one of the legendary scouts of all time. I mean, he'd been around the game in the locker rooms with players that, we only ever heard about. So go on.
Yep. The only scout in the Royals Hall of Fame. The observation tower at this facility is named after Art. I mean, he's an absolute legend. And by the way, his name on the patent of the jerseys that the Royals are going to wear this year. So we're doing this book, and I don't know how far in we are. I don't think we're halfway, but we've done a lot of work. I mean, hours and hours and hours of work, and it was all conversations. And I'm recording the conversations, and I hit the wrong button, and I hit the wrong button twice, and probably, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 hours of conversations that I had with Art, gone, just deleted, just gone, no record of them. And it just, that feeling, your stomach dropping, I mean, all these thoughts go through your head. Katie was pregnant with our first kid at the time. There was a stress, all this, and I just like stared at it for a while. You stare at something and you think that maybe it'll change, that maybe it's a lie, and it'll just change. Just staring at this, and I waited till the next day because I'm a coward. But I called Art and I told him what happened, and he just basically goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." Well, that's all right. We can talk about all that stuff again, and then we just had the conversations again. It was great. It was absolutely great.
Well, you spent more time with Art than I did, but I don't ever remember seeing him upset. I mean, I'm sure he was, but Art Stewart holding court was one of the greatest things to ever exist.
Yeah.
Art Stewart made rain delays fun.
Yeah. There was a time, you talk about rain delays. There was a game, and it was, a long time ago. I don't remember exactly the year, but, the Royals were in a bad season, and I'm down in the clubhouse after a game, and I had some idea for a story, and Art was down there. And you remember he had that cane that was a baseball bat, and I think it was a ball on the end of it. And he was just standing there. We started talking because I was waiting for this player to come out, and he just starts telling baseball stories. And at some point I was just like, whatever I was going to get from this story is not as interesting as whatever Art's going to tell me. And so we just walked out to his car and he was telling me about, some nasty left-hander that he had seen in Northwest Arkansas or whatever the night before. Those are the things that you remember. Those are the things that stick with you forever.
I like that you mentioned, like, I went all puffing my chest out and name dropping superstars. Although like Roddy Piper kissed me on live television. That was something, and it was. And I mean, he gives me this quizzical look, and he goes, "Maybe you and me should be tag partners." And he had already gone through the whole thing about I've never been to a baseball game before, and I don't have a rotator cuff, so I'm going to throw the ball, and I throw out the first pitch into the Cubs bench. What do you call that thing? Oh, it's a dugout. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
But the nicest guy. But he then says to me, "We should be tag partners." And I look back and I go, "My name's Goldberg." I always thought like Goldberg the wrestler. And he I mean, it was live television, Sam. He says, this is the year before I think I came to Kansas City. He goes, "I will become Jewish. I will change my name. I will put on a yarmulke." And I said, "Well, with you by my side, I mean, I'm not going to scare anybody, but with you." And he goes, "I love you." And he plants the big kiss on my cheek. And there we go. But you just, and then we'll wrap it up. When you mention guys like Dustin Colquitt, those aren't the superstars. And those are the best. You have to think through, because sometimes you only had a few moments with somebody, or, with Colquitt, you had a lot, but I mean, he's the punter. And I think about, in 2019, a guy named Nick Deeney made his, debut for the Royals. The only year he played, he was pretty low on the depth chart in terms of catchers, and they needed a catcher. And here we are in Baltimore. He's making his debut. He's got that Italian name. He's a Jersey boy, and his sisters are in the crowd drinking beers and catcalling him and screaming and yelling. And it was like, and then he's my star of the game. And it was like, this is someone's moment forever.
Yeah.
It's
so cool.
Like, this is much cooler than the biggest celebrity, because they're never going to remember that. But this guy and his family are going to remember every freaking moment of it. Those to me are the best moments.
You know what, too? Because when you say that, you're talking about like superstars and stuff, and I like talking to the non-superstars a lot more.
Yes.
It seems like it's just more interesting. They're more real. I mean, some of my happiest times at the Star, I loved that last job I had, the column, but covering high schools was awesome. Was absolutely awesome. I still keep in touch with some, like Kelly Donahoe and Tony Severino, and a lot of those guys. I just enjoyed that so much. You get to know people, and you learn a lot. Yeah. And actually, I mean, I know I'm probably like weird. I mean, the biggest, as far as I'm concerned, Joel, and you know this, but as far as I'm concerned, the biggest superstar on the face of the planet is Bo Jackson. And I have successfully never talked to him, because I never want to. I don't want to have that interaction with him. I want him to be.
I'm going to get the two of you on the pregame show.
I want no part. I want no part.
I know you don't.
He's going to be the guy. He's on. Like, I bought because my one was like all ratty, but when I got this job up, you remember that black and blue poster with him in the locker with the Royal stuff, and they're like, that's on the wall in the office. I mean, that's the guy I want. I don't want to. I want no conversation with him.
I fully get it. I mean, my favorite player growing up was Pete Rose, and I don't want to meet him. Mm-hmm. One year, I think we were opening in Philly, or it was their opening day, so they had all the bigwigs there, and George came on that trip, Brett, and Mike Schmidt was on the field, and George Brett introduced me to Mike Schmidt. My only regret, I got the picture with Schmidt. I should have got a picture with both of them, the two greatest third basemen of all time, but I was so scared to meet him, because I'm like, what if he's a jerk, and I don't want to tarnish that. And so that's how I feel with Pete Rose. And so I've interviewed and met Bo Jackson, and you haven't. Good for me.
Yeah. Good for me too.
That's the way, and good for you, even better for you. I totally get that. I think I threw some kind of comp or something crazy about Bo Jackson last year, and you just shredded me, because like I had violated the holiest of whatever it was.
No, Joel, it was because you asked Mike Matheny on a Zoom. Yeah. You said, does Mondi remind you of Bo Jackson? Like, athletically.
I think all of Zoom, at least in Sam's head, crashed at the same time he was texting me, "What the F is wrong with you?" Yeah. And I was never suggesting he is, but
no, I know what you're going to, but Yeah, I think my exact words. I think I interrupted. I don't like to interrupt, but I think interrupted. I said, "Keep Bo's name out your mouth."
Yes, yes, you did. That's right. You remember better than me, but yes. And now I will find a way during a press conference that you are starting with Mike Matheny to bring it up again this year, just because.
I will
Last
cut you out.
question. Like, I know you'll cut me out. Last question, my walk off. It's kind of a serious one, kind of not. Well, no, it is. How much do you think you'll miss the writing? I mean, you're a writer at heart.
Yeah. It's a great question. I'll tell you this, I don't miss it. I'm only a few months in. I don't miss it nearly as much as I thought I would. And I don't know if that's just you're getting used to a new job and a new challenge and you're excited about that. As the years go on, maybe I will. There was one time where there was an email exchange with a couple of people at the office, and they're like, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I just sent back. I didn't realize it until I sent it, but it was like probably 500-600 words. And I was just like, at the end, I was like, maybe I do miss writing, because that could have been like a 25-word email probably. But here's the deal. Like, there's times where in that job, and I love writing, but in that job, sometimes you write stuff and you're not totally feeling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if you have to do it every day and all that. And I think that getting some space and being able to write more from the heart, and it's more personal stuff. It's not going to be the same audience, obviously, but and the things that I write to Katie, to my kids, I mean, that's the most important stuff anyway. I did find myself, and actually I'm like thick-headed enough to not put 2 and 2 together until literally right now. But our second grader just turned 8 in February. And for some reason, in my head, 8 has always been like a huge birthday in my mind, especially for a little boy. I just think there's some symbolic, some symbolism to that, boy to man, boy to young man kind of stuff. And I wrote him a book. Like, I wrote him it's like a 3-ring binder, and it's like 12 pages, and the type's real big and all that stuff. But I did write him a book of just like things that I hope you keep in mind. And some of the stuff he doesn't get, and some of the stuff I hope he does. But I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have done that if I still had the old job.
I don't know. That's pretty deep in the best of ways. It's cool. So before I let you go, does the nickname I don't remember when you gave me this nickname, but I mean, I think I have a face for radio, but here we are.
Well, I think that was Bob Dutton's creation. Was face.
Maybe it was your former colleague at the Kansas City Star, good friend of both of ours. My favorite curmudgeon.
But I feel like it was kind of ironic, not because you don't have a great looking face, because obviously you do, Joel. We can all see that. But what I mean, you said at the beginning of this, that there was sort of a tradition for a long time that writers and broadcasters didn't like each other, and that there were, the writers of the the ugly, like grumpy, mustard stained, know-it-alls, right? And the TV people are like the pretty, don't ever work, don't know anything, whatever.
Everything's in a soundbite.
Yeah, you're a hairdo, right? Like that's the stereotype. And I think it was ironic, because we calling you face was bringing to light, at least in my mind, the fact that you weren't just the face. Like you did work, you do work, like you do the reporting, you ask the questions, the stuff. At least that's how it was in my head. I don't know if it always came across that way.
It's nice. I don't know. I just always enjoyed it, but it's nicer than I thought it was. I never thought it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, what, you and I were in a dugout for like 3 innings together before you were tweeting and taking shots at me.
That's right.
Which is awesome. I'm so excited for all of this.
But you were talking to a wall. Like I am but a man, Joel.
I know. I was talking to a wall because I was talking about Zach Greinke, who was over the other shoulder, and I didn't want to interrupt what he was doing, so I wanted to give myself a little bit of cover to not be too I wasn't saying anything bad about him, but I don't like to do a report about someone when they're standing 3 feet away.
This is actually like an honest, genuine description about it, is that in that moment, you were being a professional. You were being like a responsible professional.
And you put me down.
Providing insight on the broadcast. And you're right, like doing it in a a non-obstructive way.
And you went for clickbait.
Yeah, and I was just being a jackass. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly what happened.
Which I hope that never changes. I mean,
Yeah.
it will to some extent because now you're a vice president.
Yeah. So tell me what that means exactly.
I don't know. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's good. And I appreciate everything. This is great. For anyone that wants more, check us out on the podcast, wherever you find your podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube, like that. Check us out all year. Come and see us at Kauffman Stadium. It is going to be fun, and we're back and kind of normal now, which is a huge relief and breath of fresh air for all of us. Sam, congrats again on the job. Thanks for doing this.
All right, Joel. I appreciate it, my friend.